This presentation is on defining sustainability and applying sustainability to projects. It's the first of a four-part roundtable series held by the Associated Industries of Massachusetts. My name is Wayne Bates, and I am the Vice President of Operations at Capaccio Environmental Engineering, with a background in industrial wastewater and sustainability. In particular, my PhD dissertation focused on conducting life cycle assessment screenings for manufactured products. What I'd like to cover in this session is broken up into three parts. The introduction, just getting to know why each of us is here and our learning objectives. The second part is defining sustainability. And the third part, once we've defined sustainability, is how to apply sustainability to projects. So, first off, why we're here and learning objectives. Primary is everybody has something in common, and it's important for each of us to hear and understand what each other has in common, from not just a personal standpoint, but from, more importantly, from a work and objective standpoint with regards to sustainability. The two learning objectives for this session that I'd like to share, what I hope to get out of this session, is first off, the first learning objective is that everybody here, after this session, they will be able to say, I will be able to explain what the three responsibilities of sustainability mean to an organization. And this will be a reoccurring theme and learning objective throughout the four-part series. Projects vary in scope and complexity among and even within organizations. So the second learning objective that I'd like people to be able to say at the end of this training is, after this session, I will be able to review and evaluate projects with colleagues by applying the three responsibilities of sustainability. We'll provide and review some tools at the end of this training to help you do that. So, let's spend a little time defining sustainability. There are numerous definitions and even more interpretations. So this is something we're going to do each session as a refresher, and for those that are new to the group, a little repetition never hurts. I'd like to break this section up into defining sustainability up into three topic areas. First, I'll wax philosophical about the journey of learning in general and how I see it relating to sustainability. Then discuss some challenges that organizations face in general and also with regard to sustainability. And then followed by a formal definition of sustainability that maybe some folks are familiar with. Whether we admit it or not, we're all on a journey of journeys of sorts, whether it be home, work, educational, spiritual, you name it. And a lot of times it's not the destination that matters as much as the journey and the experience. And I think we all have experienced that each journey has a series of checkpoints and milestones along the way. Not all checkpoints are successful, or not all checkpoints are what you may have charted when you started out on your journey. But sometimes these detours can be rewarding. Let's explore a couple of detours that inventors have experienced. The first one is Post-it notes. I'm not sure if folks are familiar with the story behind Post-it notes, but really in the early 70s, a 3M researcher was searching for a super strong adhesive, and years later, one of his coworkers recalled this failed experiment of his coworker, and this other 3M employee was in a church choir, and he had a lot of pieces of torn paper to mark his hymns and his hymnal, and those pieces of paper kept falling out, and he remembered his coworker's weak glue, and he applied it to the paper, and sure enough it stuck to the paper. He refined that, and three years later 3M conducted a trial run of a new product called sticky notes and post-it notes, and here we are. We all are pretty much familiar with post-it notes, probably even have some in our work bags or briefcases. Another experiment that went bad resulted in superglue. In the early 40s, an experimenter was trying to develop a super strong plastic using cyanoacrylates to develop a super strong plastic for weapons. And what he ended up with was a solution that, when exposed to moisture, ambient moisture, created a very strong adhesive. They tested this adhesive, and 6 years later they tested it for wound application, dressing critical wounds, and in fact superglue was used quite a bit in Vietnam in triage for treating wounds. Kind of ironic that a experiment to develop a weapon ended up in a medical discovery that saved lives from weapons. The final discovery is Velcro, the bottom picture, and Velcro was discovered by a Swiss engineer who, when returning from a walk with his dog, was covered in those little annoying burrs, and when he looked at it under the microscope, he could see that each burr had a hook on the end of it that was latching on, or crocheting as he called it, to his shirt, and he developed Velcro from that. And Velcro is actually short for velour crochet. And the final discovery, that's an ongoing one, is by Taylor Guitar, and we'll go over a case study about Taylor Guitar in a short bit. So on the journey, some challenges get us tangled up, and they're not what we intended. We try to set out to make one modification, and before we know it, an entire process is being modified, or one change influences another change, and we find sometimes a tangled mess. This applies to sustainability, and each challenge really is a thread or a string within our organization, and if we weave it carefully, it can result in a beautiful tapestry. But if we pull the wrong way, or pull the wrong string, or not cognizant of what that string is attached to, we can find ourselves tangled up. Internally, some of the challenges with sustainability in particular are functional area silos, attracting talent, engaging employees, breaking habits. These are challenges that most organizations find themselves challenged with, and from a sustainability standpoint, functional area silos can be detrimental to implementing changes within a facility, and from a sustainability standpoint certainly can impact the ability to make change and influence change. Also, engaging employees is a challenge with sustainability. Sometimes people have different viewpoints, opinions, strong opinions, that makes it hard to break down those type of barriers, as well as breaking habits. We all know that it's difficult to break a habit, and if somebody's used to putting a certain type of article in a trash bin as opposed to a recycling bin, or a water bottle in the trash as opposed to a recycling bin. These are hard habits to break that they challenge us from a sustainability standpoint. And then some of the challenges externally that we face are stakeholders, not just shareholders, but a stakeholder can be any entity outside of the organization or inside that can influence our operations, whether it be a non-governmental organization, a regulatory organization, a neighbor, a local board of health, board of selectmen, you name it. Those are stakeholders, and we have to recognize that they exist, and we have to understand what their issues are. Fluctuating markets, we've all experienced some pain on fluctuating markets, whether it be for commodities or for our own products. Changing regulations, as the regulations change and develop, that influences the way we do our business. Supply chain is a significant external challenge of late, and will continue to be, with verifying sources of materials and verifying that those sources of materials are certified or operating in a sustainable manner. Human rights, we've all heard of human rights issues in other parts of the world where suppliers are manufacturing subcomponents or goods in a less than respectable way. And then local and regional issues, whether it be groundwater, stormwater, social, economic, environmental, you name it. Local and regional issues can play a major role in how we operate our businesses in different parts of the world. So with this, I'd like to challenge people to come up with some other challenges and maybe write down a list of challenges your organization faces and that's specific to your organization, and that's an area that you'll want to write those down and then come back to those, because it's going to be important when we're looking at projects to understand what the challenges are. Overall, the importance of challenges is not so much breaking down these challenges, but figuring out what these challenges have in common. For example, most companies operate in silos, and that's normal, it's expected. It's not a matter of breaking down or knocking down the silo when seeking sustainability solutions, but finding commonality. If we can find a common thread, we can start to weave that thread throughout the organizational fabric. For example, if a sustainability initiative is going to be attractive to new talent, and human resources understands that young, educated people to the workforce, entering into the workforce, are interested in sustainability and working for a company that has a conscience in a sustainability program, well, human resources is going to latch on to sustainability initiatives and support it. So that's a common thread that then you can build off of that. And if research and development knows that young, talented scientists are interested in sustainability, they're going to latch on to that. So now you have R&D and human resources on your side to implement sustainability programs, because it's mutually beneficial to those parts of the organization. And when we're looking at any type of corporate improvement or program, there's very rarely a one-size-fits-all universal program. It's hard to pull a template off of a software and apply it to your organization, especially in larger organizations. It might work for a smaller organization because the smaller organization can adapt to the template or adapt the template to their needs. It's a little bit more difficult as the organization gets larger. And companies, organizations are run by humans, and we're all human. We all make mistakes. We all have opinions. We all have perceptions. We all have varying backgrounds and lives. And it's a matter of figuring out what we all have in common and what's common to the organization's fabric let's spend a little time now going into more of the definition of sustainability and give a little bit of perspective of the industrial age view of sustainability. Milton Friedman was a conservative Republican economist that served under the Reagan administration, and he wrote a number of books about macroeconomics and really believed that free market economic system with minimal intervention, let the economy drive environmental decisions and social and societal decisions, that the economy essentially was the engine. And James Carville, you may recall, was a political advisor to then Governor of Arkansas, Bill Clinton, and who coined the phrase, the economy stupid, and I think it got recoined to, it's about the economy stupid, in President Clinton's 92 presidential campaign. So, I mean, regardless of which party you're affiliated with, and this is a Republican and a Democratic Party that have claimed the same type of mantra, regardless of the party, there's no denying that developed nations have used the economy to support critical decisions directly, indirectly related to the economy, to environment and society. So essentially the economy has supported environmental and societal decisions. But the economy really can't be the only driving force supporting the environment and society. We can't continue to exploit human rights and the environment for the good of an economy. We need to take a more holistic view of sustainability and what makes the economy strong for a sustained period of time, because the economy can't support society at the expense of the environment or its people. And we as a race need to start thinking about how the environment really supports society and the economy that society develops, because history is rich with fallen societies, and I'm not trying to be a doomsdayer here, but let's face it, it can happen. Certain societies have latched on to different types of economic engines that have pretty much destroyed their environment and in turn destroyed their society. So we've all likely seen the World Commission on Environment and Development, or the Brundtland Report definition of sustainable development, which meets the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. This is in line with the Iroquois Nation's 7th generation philosophy, and I know I've mentioned this before, but it's worth bringing up. When the Iroquois chiefs would meet on how their nation, a decision that was going to affect their nation, they would have to consider 7 generations of their society, of their nation, in making that decision. So those decisions would by default need to be sustainable. If they made a decision that was going to impact their tribe, and it wouldn't survive for 7 generations, that would not be sustainable. So this sustainable development definition, although it's good, it doesn't necessarily directly translate to industrial operations and manufacturing. So it's been recoined as the ability of an organization to transparently manage its responsibilities for environmental stewardship, social well-being, and economic prosperity over the long run, or long term. And really a couple of key terms here, aside from the social, environmental, and economic that we all recognize as being components of sustainability, are the words transparently, manage, and long term. Transparency relates to our ability to identify our issues and make them known. I know it's human nature and organizational nature to identify those issues and address them in good companies. But a lot of times you don't want to air your dirty laundry for fear of being persecuted or put on some type of list or blackballed in the public. But and this is a difficult point to make and topic to coach organizations through, because transparency is in fact what's going to help. I'll give you an example of some transparency in one organization that we do a fair amount of work for. They are scientists and engineers, and they track everything. They have metrics for every material and resource that they use in their operations, and they have aggressive goals for reducing those materials and emissions. Well, they're not transparent with that information. They have it, they track it, they know what it is, but not a lot of that information gets communicated externally. And a non-governmental organization looked at their operations, looked at publicly available information through permits, and one example was with wastewater. They took their wastewater permit with their maximum daily flow allowed under their permit and their maximum daily emission discharge limits, and multiplied those together and basically accused the company of discharging that mass of pollutants, when in fact many of those pollutants were non-detect when analyzed, and very rarely did the company exceed or even come close to its maximum daily flow limit. So it's just erroneous information that then this non-governmental organization publicized, and then there was damage control by the organization to say that's not representative of our operations, and then they had to disclose it. So you have to look at different types of metrics that you're tracking and material issues within your organization, and determine how and when you let that information out, you disseminate that information. Unfortunately, sustainability has become a fad or a trend with a fair amount of greenwashing and confusion, and the public, I think, is becoming more aware of what sustainability is, but still it's hard to tell when you're in a supermarket and you see green this, green that, certified this, certified that, what it really means. I think there's a really good article out there by the Harvard Business Review, written by Dan Esty and an associate, called The Sustainability Imperative. And he calls sustainability a megatrend, and he defines megatrends as trends that have permeated business. And two examples of existing megatrends or past megatrends that have now permeated business are quality and information technology. I think if I asked people listening to this presentation if their firm has quality policies or a quality program, or if their operations were based on some sort of quality requirements, most people would say yes. And it wasn't too long ago that quality systems weren't integrated into our organizations, but now they are. And if you ask the question, who's responsible for quality, you would likely get everybody raising their hand, because everybody knows they have some form of responsibility when it comes to quality. Another megatrend that he mentions is information technology, and it wasn't too long ago that our organizations operated on paper and pencil, and typewriters and dot matrix printers. But if you look at our organizations now, we have computers on every desk. Most of our equipment is computerized, with data being sent out to different types of programs. We have email. Our organizations market through Facebook, through Twitter, through you name it. So electronic media is incredibly has permeated itself into our business in many, many ways, aside from just the ability to track and trend very valuable material data. And so he says a megatrend in his article really serves four purposes. It reduces costs, it allows us to think and find new ways to redesign what we've traditionally done, it leads to revenue growth through integration of innovation, and it really allows us to differentiate our value proposition. So those four things define a megatrend, and I would say, and I think many people will start to agree, that sustainability is permeating our business. It's not a fad that is going to go away. It's really a new way of doing business, and if you're still seeing sustainability as a fad and you just need to learn enough until it goes away, I think you might want to reevaluate that standpoint, because it's here to stay, and it's a matter of figuring out what it is and how you can integrate pieces of it into your organization that fit. And like I mentioned before, not all systems are going to look the same, just like all quality systems don't look the same within an organization, just like all information systems don't look the same within an organization. So let's take a quick look at we've taken a quick look at introducing and defining sustainability. Let's spend a few minutes on reviewing a case study, which is an ongoing case study that I find quite intriguing. It's around the specific issue of ebony and how one company, Taylor Guitars, is addressing this issue. Recently, I became aware of the ebony issue after buying a Taylor guitar. And I bought the guitar. Taylor guitars are, on the high end of guitar manufacturing. And I bought the guitar not because I'm an awesome guitar player, and not because of the company's sustainability program. I didn't even know about it when I bought it. I bought the guitar because it sounded great and it was a good deal. And a few weeks after I brought the guitar home and I had registered it and all, I received the magazine that Taylor Guitar puts out called Wood and Steel, and on the front cover was a picture, and the feature article was on sustainable ebony. And inside it was an incredibly detailed article of the issue around ebony and what the company is doing about ebony. And I thought it'd be a good case study to share with folks. So first off, what are the issues? Many guitars are made with rare and exotic woods. They have great tonal qualities, from deep low notes to mid-range to high notes, depending on what a musician's looking for. Most of these woods are found in old growth forests because they're slow growth types of woods. They're very hard, they're dense, they're pest resistant. Some of these woods are in conflict regions of the world, like the Congo, and in some parts of the world, harvesting and logging has been banned because of the protecting the environment, but illegal logging is still taking place. And these rare woods, because they are slow growth and because there are so many different uses for them, are becoming extinct, and one example of that is ebony. So ebony is an exotic black wood. It's very dense and pest resistant. Trees grow to 50 to 100 feet in height, but only 18 to 24 inches in diameter. So that's what makes it so dense. The best hardwoods are found in various parts of India, in Africa, and some other remote locations. It's used to make musical instruments on guitars. It's used to make the fretboards where the strings are, where the musician will finger on the fretboard. It's hard, and the pressure of the steel string against the wood, it will resist wear. It's also made on piano keys, bagpipes, different types of mouthpieces on musical instrument, furniture. And some of the qualities are it's easy to turn, lathe, sand. It comes out super smooth and super polished look. So those are some of the qualities. So some of the issues are that there are some legal sources and other legal sources of ebony in place. One example is in Madagascar, where logging is controlled by the government, and some of the issues they've had there is in trying to protect their areas is that they would ban logging for periods of time so that they could assess where their inventory was, where their forests were, and even during those periods people would illegally log. And another thing that would happen is when the ban was lifted, you would have timber barons that would go in and stockpile logs, so they're essentially taking what they are allowed to take, stockpiling it, and then when the government stopped the logging or put a ban on the logging, the barons would jack the price up. They would have all the ebony and can control the price. So they'd flood the market during bans, and all of this fluctuating pricing on ebony would be taking place. Now they've completely banned the export of ebony, and any ebony coming from Madagascar is a violation of the Lacey Act, which we'll talk about in the next couple of slides. This slide's a news clip from the internet, and I recall when this happened, and I said, what is going on? But Gibson Guitars, which is a very large guitar manufacturer, was raided by the federal agents because they had word that they had received fraudulently labeled wood, which is a violation, and what was getting them snared up is this Lacey Act, which was originally passed in the early 1900s, and it was to regulate the trade of bird feathers for hats, and it was amended in 2008 to cover wood and other plants. And basically what it says is you can't import any goods that are exported from a country in violation of that country's laws. So if that country has a ban on the export of ebony and you receive ebony from that country, you're in violation of the Lacey law. So this is a very material issue to be aware of, and really puts an emphasis on the control of the source of materials for your organization. Ironically, some of the issues around ebony are similar to those around ivory. You might say that cutting down a tree is nowhere near the same as slaying an elephant, and you'd be right. But ebony and ivory are both used on piano keyboards. There's an issue around ebony and illegal sourcing of ebony and what's happening as a result of cutting down old growth forests. And once the tree is gone, it's going to take hundreds of years to get it back. The same with the elephant population. So some of the challenges with ebony is that from a quality standpoint, there's varying grades of black and varying grades of hardness, which influence the tone and acoustics. So that's from a product standpoint. From a supply chain standpoint, we just talked a little bit about that, but the sourcing of legal ebony is a significant issue. If you're a manufacturer, I'm pretty sure you don't want to be raided by the federal government challenging your source of goods in your facility, and being able to verify that you're complying with that law, that particular law, is a pretty big challenge. And future availability, preserving existing resources and replenishing diminishing resources, and finding alternatives. So what's Taylor done? In 2011, they recognized the issue of ebony and the sourcing issues and the price fluctuation and the Lacey Act issues, and they investigated, researched, and entered into a joint venture with a mill in Cameroon. partner in an ebony mill, they would then control the source of their ebony. And they set out to understand some of the local and regional issues associated with their supply. So what did they find? Well, they found there was no infrastructure for logging in this area. Basically, it was a tribe-based logging system where certain tribes owned the permits to log, and then they would hire other tribes to go into the woods to log ebony. And there isn't a very good infrastructure from the roads. It's not as though they drive skidders into the woods and cut down and haul out the trees. What they do is they go in, they fell a ebony tree, and then they cut it up into pieces that can be hand carried out of the woods. So really they have a limit of how far they can go into the woods. And a significant issue that they found was that only 1 in 10 trees is pure black. So the source of ebony is 1 in 10 is pure black. And they have to cut the tree down to know whether or not it's the quality that they're looking for. And if you had to hand carry every tree out by hand, and you were only going to get paid for pure black ebony, and you cut down a variegated ebony tree that doesn't meet the quality, what are you going to do? Well, what they found was that the natives, the tribesmen, were leaving it there. They're not going to carry a tree out of the woods for free. They're going to cut down another one to find the black ebony tree. So, again, in relating this to the issues around ivory, if you think about it, and they're cutting down 10 trees to get one, that's really going to diminish a source. And the variegated ebony is of equal quality as the black ebony. It just looks different. And so Taylor said, we can't have this going on anymore. We need to figure out how to use the variegated ebony. We need to use what the forest gives us, is the quote from Bob Taylor. And so what they've started to do is they've started to develop models of guitars that are using ebony on the fronts and backs of the guitars, and not the variegated ebony for appearance and sound. They're also making some models with fretboards that are variegated ebony. And they're working with other guitar makers, and some of the conversations that they shared in the article is really a challenge when dealing with other guitar makers. One guitar maker said, well, why don't we use the variegated ebony on the lower model lines, the lower cost model lines? And Bob Taylor was pretty clear in his opinion of that, is that you can't do that, because then the variegated ebony is going to be seen as a lower quality when it really isn't. We have to educate the musical industry that variegated ebony is just as good as black ebony. And now they're looking at ways to possibly stain it, or if they can't break that barrier, or looking at ways to decorate it so that people will want it, which is a pretty big challenge, as you can imagine. They've invested in the mill, and by investing in the mill, they've added value to ebony prior to shipping. Their guitar manufacturing operations are in Mexico, and what they were doing before is just sending rough cut blocks of the ebony, and they ship that off to Mexico. That gets cut, and there's waste in Mexico from the cutting and dust and whatnot. But now what they can do is they can cut these pieces closer to final size, so that any of the waste stays at the plant. The shipping costs are less because they're shipping less waste. They've upgraded equipment, so they've made the equipment at the mill safer by expanding what they're able to do at the mill. They've also been able to provide more jobs, so there's more work. They've also trained a lot of these employees. They're frequently sending people from the United States and Mexico to their different types of qualities in the wood, so they're educating their employees. You're getting a more educated workforce, you're providing more jobs, and you're paying more. And so you're really investing in a social benefit to the plant in this area, and to the society in this area. And what else are they doing? Well, they're telling the story. By me telling you this story about this guitar company and what they're doing gives you a perception of, wow, this guitar company is doing good. They have a conscience. If I'm a acoustical engineer just coming out of college from an electrical engineering program and going to work for a company, I'd want to work for them. And if I were some artisan, in wood, I'd want to work for them. And so by telling their story and being transparent, they recognize that they still have significant issues to deal with, but they're sharing those issues, and the general public can say, you know what, yeah, good for them. So I just wanted to share that case story because it kind of pulls together a number of the presentation slides before. I mean, it is a journey. They're on a journey. They've actually had a couple of detours along the way, but they've benefited from some of these uncharted detours on their journey, and they found out more when they were looking into the issues, and they're continuing to address those issues and rising up to those challenges. And that's something that I wanted to share in this presentation. So let's look at projects. So Taylor Guitar took on a project. Their project was buying a mill in Cameroon to mill ebony. Let's take a look at some projects. And before we apply some of the techniques that we've developed, let's spend a few minutes discussing project planning and execution. I'll break this up into three parts: the project planning, project execution, and then sustainable projects. From a planning standpoint, let's define a project as any corporate initiative, goal, task, etc. And that project can be either unplanned, and some examples of unplanned projects are responses to inquiries, neighbor complaints, unexpected employee turnover, and emergencies. These unplanned events, they cause us to be reactive, go into reactive management mode to address unplanned issues. And then we have planned projects. I think we're most familiar with construction projects that are planned, permitting projects that are planned, or if we have a new product line that we're developing and going to introduce, we usually have a rollout plan for those type of projects. So the difference between an unplanned and planned project really is unplanned projects cause us to be more reactive, and reactive management distracts us from our planned management. So a lot of times we don't get to the things that we want to get to because we're doing things that we didn't know existed or things that came up. So we want to move towards the planned project. And I bring this up because I think a lot of us, not to be critical, and I think it's, to a certain extent, it's a good thing, but a lot of us do random acts of sustainability. We're searching for the magic potion, the magic bullet, the secret sauce to sustainability that's going to make us the better company. Let us distinguish ourselves, our value proposition, from our competitors. And nobody really plans to fail, but many people often fail to plan. And sometimes we get stuck in the game, surrounded by obstacles, unable to make a move. Other times we're making moves but just can't seem to see where all the pieces are from our vantage point. And again, it's not that we're planning to fail, we're just often getting stuck or trapped into one way of thinking. So this raises the question, if we successfully plan projects, how do we successfully execute them? So if we can get out of this game to plan our projects? Well, this comes down to two points: effective projects and efficient projects. Effective projects are the type of project that we select. It's what we do. It's doing the right project. So if we have 10 different initiatives, which ones are the right projects to select? And then once we've selected those projects, it's the project execution. How do we efficiently execute the project? It's how we do what we do. Doing the project right. I'm going to spend a minute on both of these points here. So let's break it down graphically into effective project selection. All right, what we do. We can pick the wrong project, or we can pick the right project. I think we've all experienced the pain of picking the wrong project, how long it takes, how difficult it is. It's unaccomplishable. It's too expensive. There's a lot of cost overruns. There's uncontrolled variables to it. And in the end, we just picked the wrong project. The execution of the project is how we're doing the project. The execution, efficiently executing the project. We can have a project that's the right project, we just don't execute it properly. We don't plan, we don't have the right resources, we didn't allocate the right amount of money, we went down the wrong path. We just did the project wrong. Or we can do projects right, and it's how we do the projects. When we overlay efficient and effective projects, we get this matrix of how we do what we do. And if we look at it, what we want to try to do is we want to be up in this upper right quadrant. We want to do the right project right. We want to select the right project, the effective project, and we want to execute the project efficiently. An example of this is we've all been to a restaurant, I'm sure, and I'm sure that we've all had a bad restaurant experience. Well, relating right projects right to a restaurant experience, if you go into a restaurant and order a hamburger medium rare, the hamburger is your project, that is what, and medium rare is the how. That's how you want your project done. Hamburger, medium rare. Well, the order comes out and it's a hamburger that's raw. Well, that's the right project. They got the right project. They just did it wrong. Okay? An example of the wrong project right would be a sirloin steak, medium rare. Wrong project, perfect execution. And then staying out of this quadrant, this is just, they brought you sushi. So they didn't even get the right type of meat, and they didn't even try to cook it. So that's an example of right projects right and project execution, and that's where it becomes important from moving from the unplanned to planned projects. And that's what we want to spend a little bit of time now in. So we've identified what a project is, execution and efficiency. If you're developing a plan for that and establishing a method of execution, but how do we apply these philosophies or these techniques to sustainability, where we have our three responsibilities and of social well-being, economic prosperity, and environmental stewardship? Well, what I like to do is break this down into a fractal, where we can look at new and existing projects, and if we look at projects that have various, or were selected based on various responsibilities, there's overlapping responsibilities, and that may make projects, for example, a social environmental project, it'd be a bearable project. Many of us are familiar with environmental economic projects that have a return on investment Maybe it's water conservation, energy conservation, where we are reducing the amount of water, which improves our environmental stewardship and also saves money. These are viable projects. And the project may have been selected based on cost, or it may have been selected based on water. We have one client that has a cap on water use. They're in a water-strained area, so they're constantly seeking opportunities to reduce water. Not necessarily from cost. If it were available, they would pay for it. It's just not available. So that's an issue that they've focused on from an environmental standpoint, with a secondary benefit of economic, which makes it viable. Another example of project that might be a social well-being and environmental project is employee safety. We implement personal protective equipment programs, one, because it's the law, to protect our employees and to make their working environments safe, and those are bearable type of projects. Now, one particular overlap from a social and economic standpoint might be volunteerism or philanthropy. Our organization may see the benefit of donating money to local charities, so they want to invest in the local community. They want to demonstrate to the community that they are good citizens, and that's an equitable type of investment. Our challenge is to look at existing projects for what they were originally selected for. So to brainstorm on the projects that we do, and here's a tool, simple tool that we've developed, Matrix, to kind of lay out this fractal into its various responsibilities. And by listing off existing projects and identifying why that project was selected, was it primarily cost reduction, or was it a social issue or an environmental issue, the reason why that project was selected? And then just brainstorm all the projects, or a number of projects that you've pursued. And then once you've done that and identified what the primary and secondary objectives for the project were, now you want to try to fine-tune this. Now you want to think. Now you want to bring your functional areas together again to say, okay, well, we do health and safety programs here, and that's a social, environmental issue. But what are the financial issues associated with that? Well, somebody might say, well, we have lower insurance premiums the lower our incident rates are. Well, there you go. You just pulled in the economic element to a bearable project. So now you have a safety project that you implemented, whether it was a machine guarding initiative or whatnot. Yeah, sure, you had initial capital cost, but you're likely going to have future lower costs from insurance premiums and claims. So you want to try to package up these various projects, and we've seen so many different types of projects, but when you go through this exercise with a cross-functional team, you're going to start to see where some of these projects have commonality. And if you can string these projects together and find the commonality amongst your functional area team, you're going to gain some momentum with things that you've already done. You don't even have to take on new projects yet. You're looking at your existing projects to see how you can package them, what's their impact on sustainability. And then if we're looking at new projects, now if we apply this technique into new projects, we want to understand the objective of the project and dive deep into why we're doing the project and how we might be able to do the project slightly different, in a slightly different manner, that then pulls in the social or the environmental or the economic component to it. If we have some type of human resources initiative that is going to monetarily benefit employees. So there's a financial element to improve the working conditions. How can we pull an environmental aspect into that overall project initiative? And so this is a technique to use on new projects. So I'd like to circle back to our 2 learning objectives and understanding and explaining the 3 responsibilities. Hopefully after viewing this presentation, folks will be able to say, I understand and can explain the 3 responsibilities. This is what they mean to my organization. And that you can also say that after this session, I'm able to review and evaluate projects with colleagues by applying the 3 responsibilities of sustainability. Well, thank you very much for participating in this session. The next session for the AIM roundtables in the Central Region is evaluating your current state